We can all agree that millennials got the best generation, but why were we listening to Pretty Ricky at such a young age? I had every album, I knew every song, and I went to the Scream 2 and saw them in concert. I used to have Love Like Honey and Hotline on repeat every day. Do you hear me? Why was our parents letting us listen to that? Did they even know what we was listening to?
We think about racialized boyhood and girlhood and all the music and things that come with it. I won't deny that Black youth don't experience some level of sexuality or curiosity, but I always think it's interesting how it's pretty much pushed to younger audiences. Today, I want to talk about Pretty Ricky and how their music was basically sexualized, even though they were like older teens, early 20s. In the mid-2000s, Pretty Ricky emerged as one of the most recognizable R&B and hip-hop groups in Black popular culture. With their provocative lyrics, shirtless performances, and hypersexualized branding, the group became an immediate staple on shows like 106 in Park, which catered largely to a teenage audience. Their music, which carried a parental advisory label, was still played daily on video countdowns, promoted across youth center spaces, and consumed by a generation of millennials, many of whom were still navigating adolescence. For Black girls in particular, the group's popularity intersected with the larger issue of over-sexualization in music, raising questions about how Black girlhood is shaped and distorted by the adultification of both male and female bodies in entertainment. Pretty Ricky's debut album, Blue Stars, was produced in 2005, and its successors were explicit in both tone and imagery. Songs like Grind With Me, Your Body, and Juicy became staples on urban radio and music television. Despite the adult content, 106 and Park frequently feature Pretty Ricky in its top 10 video countdown. The irony here is that a show marketed primarily to Black teenagers amplified a group whose central selling point was sexual explicitness. Even when industry warnings like the parental advisory label existed, they functioned more as branding tools than as deterrents. To be quote unquote too grown became part of the appeal. And teens consumed the content eagerly because it was marketed in their spaces. This dissonance is most striking in the track Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, where Baby Blue explicitly raps, "You don't need ID for me." The lyric, unsettling in its dismissal of age boundaries, circulated freely among teens. While the song did not receive the same mainstream push as their biggest hits, the message reveals the blurred moral lines within the group's music. By centering sexuality as Pretty Ricky's catalog highlights how music targeted toward Black youth often packaged predatory undertones as entertainment. For Black girls, the presence of Pretty Ricky on after-school countdown shows reflected a broader pattern. Black girlhood has historically been denied innocence. Media outlets have long portrayed Black girls as more mature, more sexually available, and less in need of protection than their white counterparts. When sexual content was marketed in spaces meant for teens, Black girls were both the audience and the implied subjects. They were socialized to internalize sexual readiness as a form of desirability, while at the same time held responsible for the consequences of being perceived as fast. The American Psychological Association defines sexualization as occurring when a person's value is reduced to their sexual appeal or behavior, when attractiveness is placed above all else, when someone is treated as an object for another's gratification, or when sexuality is imposed on them. Women and girls are inundated with these sexualizing images through music, advertising, film, and even interpersonal expectations such as family pressures to pursue beauty. This constant exposure makes it nearly impossible for women, and especially young Black girls, to escape sexualized messaging, compounded with racialized stereotypes that cast them as prematurely adult, and the impact is particularly damaging. The contradiction is clear. Black girls could cheer for groups like Pretty Ricky on television, admire their style and charm, and feel culturally represented by seeing Black boy bands at the top of the charts. Yet the very content they consumed often reinforced stereotypes that denied them space to be simply young. The ideal of quote unquote grown relationships, older men with younger women, or teenagers expected to perform adult sexuality blurred the line between admiration and exploitation. There is, however, a necessary nuance when we talk about Black teenagers and sexualization. While the media often pushed sexual imagery, the reality is that many Black teens were already negotiating sexuality in complicated ways. Some grew up in households or communities that were strict in religion, where conversations about sex were framed around abstinence, sin, or silence. And yet, those same communities still witness high rates of teenage sexual activity and pregnancy. There is an article that talks about how Black mothers and daughters talk about sex, and often it's focused around mothers telling their daughters to wait to have sex, protection from sexual transmitted disease, pregnancy and sexual violence, relationships, partners, and anatomy and physiology. But mothers also warn daughters about characteristics of male partners, emphasizing destructive effects of pregnancy like the loss of time, money, opportunities for education, and encourage daughters to practice sexual restraint as they were responsible for stopping sexual activity. And daughters reported that both silence around sexual topics and the use of scare tactics was unhelpful, unrealistic, and resulted in them feeling fearful and ashamed, being reticent to engage in PCSC and developing a negative perspective of sexuality. Nonetheless, everybody doesn't even have these conversations with their mothers. Oftentimes, at least in the South, a lot of Black youth are told that they should just simply wait, not have sex, or not get pregnant. There's not like this comprehensive education on protecting yourself. The tension between silence at home and saturation in media creates a vacuum of understanding. For example, when news outlets reported that nearly 90 girls at one Memphis high school were pregnant, it was treated as a scandalous headline rather than an opportunity to question what young people were actually being taught about sex, protection, and healthy relationships. Media images, whether in music, television, or film, often fill the gaps that schools and churches refuse to address. For Black girls, this meant being exposed to adult sexual messaging without the tools to navigate consent, safety, or emotional impact. Research underscores this point. A 2006-2007 survey of ninth graders, 3 large urban high schools found that students listened to an average of nearly 15 hours of songs with degrading sexual content each week. Those most exposed to such lyrics were more than twice as likely to have had sexual intercourse compared to peers with the least exposure. Even among those who had not yet had sex, higher exposure predicted nearly double the likelihood of engaging in non-coital sexual activity. Importantly, non-degrading sexual lyrics show no significant effect. This suggests that repeated exposure to degrading sexual content, like that often popularized in Pretty Ricky's catalog, for example, has measurable influence on how teens experience sexuality. Pretty Ricky's rise also illustrates a racialized trend in the music industry. The over-marketing of sex through Black artists, while pop boy bands like NSYNC and the Jonas Brothers cultivated a balance of flirtation, innocence, and accessibility for young audiences. Black male groups were frequently promoted through hypersexual imagery. For Pretty Ricky, this meant shirtless performances, suggestive choreography, and lyrics that left little to the imagination. The industry packaged them not as versatile artists, but as archetypes of erotic fantasy. This racialized double standard reinforces harmful messages for both Black girls and boys. For girls, it amplified expectations of sexual maturity. For boys, it equated masculinity with sexual conquest. And admired Pretty Ricky for their cultural presence. The group also embodied how the music industry reduces Black performers to sexual spectacle. The group members themselves, objectified in the process, became actors in a large narrative where Black men's primary cultural currency was erotic performance. So in conclusion, Pretty Ricky's influence on millennial teenagers reveals both the joy and the harm embedded in Black popular culture. For many, the group was a source of pride, a reminder that Black boy bands could command mainstream attention and dominate platforms like 106 and Park. Yet their music also carried troubling messages that blurred the boundaries of age, innocence, and desire. By placing hypersexual content directly in youth spaces, the industry contributed to the premature sexualization of Black girls and reinforced the objectification of Black male adolescents and reinforced the objectification of Black men. At the same time, it is crucial to acknowledge that Black teens were not passive consumers. Many were already navigating sexuality under the weight of religious strictness, cultural silence, and peer influence. In the absence of comprehensive sexual education, media content like Pretty Ricky's became a powerful, if dangerous, teacher. When headlines sensationalized teenage pregnancy rather than interrogating systemic fears, they revealed just how little protection Black girlhood was ever afforded. To revisit Pretty Ricky's legacy, then, it is not only to critique the music industry, but to reckon with how culture, silence, and spectacle together shaped an entire generation of Black youth. These are my thoughts about Pretty Ricky, and I'll probably do some more deep dives on how media shaped my experience as a millennial. Let me know if you have any topics to suggest. And thank you so much for listening to Books and Looks TV. I'll see y'all next time.